Why wait to see if you'll get something you like this Valentine's Day when you can go to BlueNile.com and find something you'll love? Whether you're looking to treat yourself to a little winter sparkle or show a galentine how much you appreciate them, Blue Nile offers a wide selection of high-quality designs, expert guidance, and free 30-day returns for the ultimate peace of mind. You can even design your own jewelry. Right now, save up to 50% at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
Empire.
Hello, and welcome to another live stream edition of the John Conn Report. Do me a favor, subscribe to the show wherever you do your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you're joining us on the live stream, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and you can become a member of the show. Go to the Empire Media YouTube homepage, click the word join, find a membership tier that you're comfortable with, and there you go. And welcome aboard Angelo Rowe, who has become a YouTube member. Also, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now about the Dan Quinn presser, some of the news that came out of there. And of course, you can listen to my guy, Bram Weinstein, on ESPN 630 and the host of the play-by-play voice of the Commanders. Bram, we have been to a few of these opening pressers for new coaches.
Yeah.
I was just counting. This is my eighth one, the new coach presser. This is my eighth one. How many is it for you?
Oh boy. Well, I was at ESPN when Jay Gruden got hired, so I wasn't at that one. I watched it, but I wasn't at that one, and that means I wasn't at Shanahan either. So let's see. Dan Quinn, Rivera,
Spurrier,
Zorn, Joe Gibbs, Marty. 6, I think. So I missed 2. Yeah.
I just remember, and some of them all stand out for different ways. I do remember you and I leaving the presser after Jim Zorn's opening presser and you saying it's going to be a disaster. And it was, because you get that first impression. And that's what it is. You get the first impression for guys like Marty and Gibbs and all these guys. What was your first impression of Dan Quinn today? From today?
I thought he hit all the high notes. Listen, like elephant in the room is like, obviously the decision to hire him didn't land exactly, with some of the fan base.
Really?
We talked about this a week ago, and, it's kind of persisted in every interview I've done anywhere else, like has at least included a question about that, which, I don't want to revisit all of it. I think they made a decision for who they thought was their best leader. And honestly, if you listen to today, it kind of hit a lot of the high notes. Like, I really liked how introspective he was about Atlanta and said, I am a different person than I am then. I did this. He described it as I did a 360 on myself after, it went down the way it did. He was dying to do this again and reprove it. He calls himself wiser now. He talked about, I'm going to stay in my lane. I want to do my job. Which is kind of the alignment that everyone's been talking about, the structure. There's no stepping on anybody's toes. And I thought he hit a lot of the high notes. And, we're going to be explosive. We're going to be physical. Great. Are we going to be a defense that turns the ball over, again? Great. There was a lot there that I really liked. And I really thought he really came off very positively to me today.
The way I described to somebody there was not flashy, but a lot of substance.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of substance to him. And one of the things that, first of all, again, people in the league love him. There was somebody on the staff, the staff that was there the last 4 years, somebody on that staff who knows they're not going to come back, texted me and told me how much he really likes Dan Quinn. This, you know what I mean? So like this, so for people, I tell you, like, this is like the NFL people really like this guy. And you can see why when you're around him. I don't know if they're going to have this great run when he's here. I don't know that. There's other factors that go into it. But the things that, and you talk about introspective, I think recalibration is the new culture, apparently. But so I think like I think he's very forward looking. I think he's constantly, when you talk to him, when you hear about people from him, looking forward to try and improve what he can do. And I think that's what this was. This is not Ron Rivera coming here doing the same thing, saying the same stuff, because like in Atlanta, it sounded like he felt like he spread himself too thin. And when he talked about that, he talked about Adam Peters. This is why it can be different for him. All he has to do is work at managing the team and not having to call plays and do all that. So I think like there are definitely, he could point to changes that he's made in himself, in the way he operates, to say that it can be better because I've learned this. Now you have to go out and do it, but he could, but like you're right. Introspective, I think, is a good word.
Well, I mean, listen, I mean, it's funny. You started with how many coaching, press conferences have you gone to? The majority of those, I walked out feeling pretty pumped up about it, especially when it was like Marty or Spurrier or Gibbs. Right. I felt pretty good about it. Others, maybe not as much, but in those, or Rivera for that matter, I was very, excited about what was coming out of it. And none of them won very much here. So, like I'm, we'll see what happens, but it's a different structure. It's a different time. It's a different ownership group. They have a true GM, who's not just has the title, but like can conduct the job. And, let's see how it goes. And I know I was laughing at recalibration. That's our first buzzword. We had, we got to relive all the Rivera ones in the last few weeks, like position flex, catch radius, all those type of things. But with recalibration, we got our first word, but I agree with that too, because I just don't think there's a such thing as a rebuild in the NFL anymore. I think you can turn things around relatively quickly, in this league now. Houston's a sign of it. Jacksonville's a sign of it. Indianapolis, even last year, just missed the playoffs. I think the Bears, if they get this right, could be good next year. Like, I don't believe in this kind of rebuild thing any longer. I think the difference between the good teams and the bad teams is very slim in this league. And so I agree with that. I don't want them to put any kind of timeline or dates on it. And asking him today, how long do you think it is before they're like really competitive? You don't even know what the roster looks like. So it's just a ridiculous question to even ask something like that. Like, call me in August when looks like we can figure out what the roster looks like. And then we can have a conversation about how competitive this thing can be in year one for him. But I agree with him. I just don't believe in the NFL that you need a very long time to be competitive.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, and especially Houston was a prime example where they won 3 or 4 games a year before, win 10.
3 years in a row. 3 years in a row they did.
And
they clearly got it right with their coach, and they clearly got it right with that quarterback.
Right.
And then they're extremely young, and all of a sudden they're 10-7.
Right. Houston was bad before this. Let's not. This is not like Houston had this great roster and they're achieving. Houston was bad for a few years. That's why they kept changing coaches, the structure, and all that. You get the right people in there and it matters. I think the big difference, and it's funny because I do remember Spurrier's presser, and I also remember that he couldn't name a damn person on that team because it's like he had no clue what he was walking into. None, zero. And so I always thought of all that group, he and Zorn, you knew were going to be bad off the bat. But I think, with Quinn, I think there's a passion that you talk about, but because we've seen this, the proof is going to be during the fall. Like everything that happens here and is said now, well, do you win? Do you build a team that can win? And I think that's where the difference is. When you look at the front table, it's Josh Harris, it's Quinn, and it's Adam Peters. Those are the guys sitting up there today. It's not Dan Snyder, Bruce Allen, and Jay Gruden.
Yeah.
And
so there's no guarantees. I mean, like we don't know. Nobody knows, and we'll find out. But if you just go off first impressions, and I think the initial first impression, obviously with a lot of people, was he did not fit the criteria of what they expected. They expected someone younger who hadn't been a coach before and likely an offensive-minded person. None of those things happened. So that took a few days. And then it also didn't help that last week was awkward to whatever degree anybody wants to admit it or spin it or talk about it. It was. And they may never have really intended to offer the job to Ben Johnson, but they did wait to speak to him. And what he did was bare minimum unprofessional. And, at worst, it really made the organization, put them in whether he intended to or not, put them in a somewhat bad light. And they had to go into a spin cycle, even if they didn't even feel like they had to go into a spin cycle. So this is how did it land? I don't know. I'd rather ask the fans that, honestly. For me, I didn't think it was a bad hire. I knew how serious they were taking him the whole time. I think you saw how genuine and, like that he is. And but I don't know if they're going to win or not. I haven't seen them win very much through the year. So I'm hoping they do.
Yeah. And no, he was not a fallback guy. He was a guy that from the jump was a strong candidate. So this was not this guy pulled this guy, but we don't have to rehash there because like I've talked about that. So I just want to focus on like things today. The other thing, not calling defensive plays. Do you like that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I mean, considering who the defensive coordinator is, which he's worked with him on a previous staff in recent years, sure, that makes sense to me. That stuff can always change, but like, I don't know why I would go into it thinking that would be the case. So no, I don't have a problem with that. Not on that. I don't have a problem with that. Do you?
No, and I don't, and I like it, to be honest, because one of the things, and this again, somebody texted me the other day, a coach in the NFL league who's coached with him. And he was talking about like some of the stuff that was all being said. He goes, they had hired one of these other, actually I talked to him, wasn't texting. So you're like, if they had hired one of these guys, you're getting a coordinator you hope is a head coach. Said with Quinn, you hired a head coach. So I think that's what it comes down to. They need him to be a head coach. And a lot of times when Jay was here, I remember talking to him about this. He would want to he would have ideas for the defense, but he didn't really feel like he had the time to then go over there and spend the time in some meeting rooms or things like that to go over some of this stuff, like some blitzes that give him problems that maybe you can do this. I think when you're a head coach, you have more time to kind of delve into other areas when it's like this. It's great to have a play call. That'd be fine if you're obviously. I think hiring like Dan Campbell showed that this can work. John Harbaugh has shown that it can work. So I think I like that he's taking this route. I think it's a good way to go. And there's so much that goes on with these things that it's just important that you keep your hand on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I liked what he said about what he thinks his job is, which is to get everybody to be hands on the ground, like hands in. I'm doing the team. I'm not worried about anything else. Even Ron Rivera kind of admitted by the end there was a lot that was going on that would just made the job almost too much. And to be fair to him, like I don't know how he would have fared if he came in under this structure. Who knows? Like it's impossible to know. But what I liked what he said was because someone asked him, like, what does success look like? And he basically said, are we playing the way that I expect us to play? Physical, explosive, fast. You're going to know what you're supposed to do. We want you to be able to play fast. We want you to buy in. We want you to be part of this, want to be part of this, play hard. And if that's what they're doing, then it is a success in year one. And he hit a lot of high notes for me. And I just posted one of the comments up who said something like, we don't need a sexy pick. We need results. I agree. Well, so long overdue for that. I 100% agree. I'm done winning the offseason. Like, let's go win on the field a little bit. And I'll tell you what, like, as far as like reputations go and what, 1 hour of a press conference sounded like to me, this guy sounds like someone who knows what he's doing and knows how to motivate people. So let's go. But
not, again, I'm going to stress not just him, but it's the owner and it's the GM. Those two give it the best setup I've seen here in a few decades because of those two. Then now you got to get the coaching stuff right. And he's got to, you got to fill out your staff. You got to do this and that. Speaking of the staff, the Cliff Kingsbury hire, what'd you think?
It just, when you see it like pop up like that, it screams we're getting Caleb Williams. So I don't know that that's happening, and I don't know where the Bears stand on this, and I don't know, like where Caleb and his people stand on all of this because they're pushing back at anybody saying like we're trying to dictate anything at this point. But sitting at number 2, and now all of a sudden the guy who worked directly with him is coming here as the offensive coordinator, and he congratulated him, which I don't want to make too much of that, but at least he likes him enough to do that. I don't know. I'm on Caleb watch. That's what I thought about it. Outside of that, I thought that they were an explosive offense with a uniquely skilled quarterback who I think for the most part sounded like pretty much got along with him. And he's got this history with high tier, multifaceted quarterbacks. So, I got to go watch Arizona again now. I mean, I love, it was a great coach. I don't know, but they didn't win a lot. They didn't win a ton. They got to the playoffs once under him. But that said, it really screams like they're going to take a run at Caleb. That's what it screamed to me when they hired him.
And I'll be honest, I don't think it screams that, not to that level, because he's got experience working with young quarterbacks. But again, and I pointed this out on the podcast last night, Phil Longo runs that air raid offense. Those two are very tight. Phil Longo coached Drake May and Sam Howell. Those guys have been in this offense. So that's why I say, I don't think it screams that to me as much as it is like, could you go make that run? Sure. But I also know, and nobody has told me they wouldn't. But I also know, like, they know they have to build through the draft. Are they really how much would you have to move up to get that? And if Caleb Williams is that good, the Bears aren't trading out of that pick. So, unless I have a hard time believing they'd stick with Justin Fields over this, but that draft capital means a lot to them. I hear that all the time from them so far. And so that's right now, depending on what it costs, maybe you do it because you have this guy, but I don't think they hired him just to go get Caleb Williams.
No, I'm not saying that, but it just screamed like it's just too on the nose. It literally worked with the guy last year.
He did. And that can be, you don't know how that can be processed. I remember when Dwayne Haskins was here, everybody's like, oh, they go get Urban Meyer. He worked with them. That was going to be a reason that Urban was going to stay away. So you never know what somebody thinks of him. I don't know. And we know that Caleb Williams is a super talented kid. And maybe it's like he loves the guy and he wants to go do it. And maybe that is him. I don't know, but I'm not sitting here thinking, oh, now they're definitely going to go get him. I don't think that. I think you do go through it, but I think you hire him because he can develop a young quarterback, whomever it is. Yes. Can he do that again here? And then I think the other thing that, he does, Dan Quinn has known him for a while, it turns out, which I didn't realize until the press conference. And it's an offense that I think has given him some fits, maybe, I guess. So I don't know. I don't take that. Like, I think there's a natural, but I don't take it for granted that they're going to somehow just automatically do that.
No, I don't either. And I think, here is someone who, has worked with very high level quarterbacks, multifaceted quarterbacks, and has, excelled with them. Worked with Pat Mahomes, worked with Kyler Murray, worked with Caleb Williams. I personally, I like the options they have too. I think there's, unique subset here with either Jaden Daniels or Drake May or Caleb Williams. They all kind of do different things.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of pick the one you like the most. So I think they're in a very good spot there, but I believe that you go after the guy you want. You don't just sit there and go, I'll take any of them.
Oh, agreed.
For me, early, that is Caleb Williams. But I'm with you. I don't want to pay a king's ransom to move up one spot, so I don't want to do that. But if you think this guy's going to be special and you think the other guys are going to be really, really good, then you go after the special guy. That's how I feel about it. And I think he might be. That's just my initial impression of him. I think he might be.
Looking for a super offer for Super Bowl 58? DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered. Bet on the big game and turn $5 into $200 instantly in bonus bets. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code KEIM, K-E-I-M. New customers can bet $5 to get $200 instantly in bonus bets only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 58 with code KEIM, K-E-I-M. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or in West Virginia, visit www.800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/football for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources.
Dr. Wonderful, and he changes the name all the time. It's great. Of the QBs, left to two, which fits what he wants to do offensively? Well, clearly, I just said, like both these guys do. I think the question is, and I don't know how Jaden Daniels fits completely I don't think it would be, I don't know. He runs some at LSU, it looked like, a lot of certainly some zone reads, some RPO. And I think there's probably a lot of things that he could operate well in that offense. I think that's something that I want to myself need to get more familiar with, because that could be a guy that you have to look at. Because I bring up the connection to the others just because just to say, do not assume this. And then, the other part, Bram, again, you're right. If it comes down to we'll just take a 3rd round pick to move up. Okay, perfect. But I don't think if that pick is for sale, you're going to get more than one team involved, and that drives up the price.
Undoubtedly, they're going to get a massive offer for it. But the question is, it'll be to them. Do you want Anderson Jr. and a pretty good whatever rest of package, or do you want to move down to wherever you need to go to? Name the team: Vikings, Raiders, whoever else it may be.
Falcons.
And the one that really the one that I think sticks out to me that could be very enticing too would be New England. They're clearly going to go get a quarterback. So do they want to go from 4 to 1? And the Bears hope Marvin Harrison lands for them at 4, which is not out of the realm either. And what are they willing to pay as opposed to what Washington's willing to pay? So I agree. This could cost too much, but I don't know. In my opinion, you're sitting where you are. I don't think you don't select a quarterback here. You're very rarely in this spot. I think there are very good options here, but in my opinion, I think one of them might be special, and that's the one that I would go after.
Well, I think I would definitely agree that when I've talked to people in the league, and I don't think I need to talk to people in the league just for this, he's the guy. There's a separator there. There's no doubt that it's Caleb, and then it's the others. And it's just but to me, it's okay, it's Caleb and the others, but then it's Caleb atop of, let's say you like Jaden Daniels. And is he better than Caleb? Is Caleb Williams better than Jaden Daniels plus multiple high picks that you're going to have to give up, who could be impact players for you? And depending on how you view, I know they feel this roster needs a lot of work, but if you have here, the thing is too, Bram, if you feel you have a chance to go get that guy and this is your shot, it's hard not to take it. I mean, I agree with that. I'm not, but my only thing is I'm not assuming they're going to go do this. You already have Caleb here playing for 10 years and getting the Ring of Fame.
I don't assume anything either. I'm not. But just the hiring of Kingsbury, kind of screamed to me that's got to be in play. It already kind of was anyway.
Oh, I think it was already in play.
It was already in play. But, here's, if they did want to try to attract him here, he did just work with him, and they did actually want to try to acquire him. They wouldn't get the guy he doesn't like. So, it does feel like, that it adds up to they'd like to take a run at this. It doesn't mean that the Bears are going to trade it. It doesn't mean the Bears will trade it to them. So we'll just have to see how that kind of works out. Outside of that, I agree with you. I think they need a lot of help with the roster for sure. I think there's a lot of spots. They do have some cap room to work with. They do have a lot of work to do. I don't envy Adam Peters here in year 1. He's got a tremendous amount of work to do. He's got a lot of contracts to try to navigate. He's got to fill out a roster before free agency hits. And so they've got a lot of work to do.
They do. And to be clear, again, if you think he's the guy and you think he could be special, they're like, you know what, you're not going to have this chance again for a few years to get a guy of this talent, then you've got to make a run. But I think it just depends. We won't know. I'm not sure Chicago knows exactly what they're doing, or certainly hasn't communicated that. And they wouldn't to me anyways, or to you. So, but it's hard to believe that they wouldn't take Caleb Williams. And I think the thing I'd worry for this fan base is Caleb Williams going to become the next Ben Johnson for them, chasing this one, person that then ends up somewhere else or stays. And, my own belief with Ben Johnson is if somebody's kind of went about it that way, maybe you dodge something this time. So, who knows? We don't know. We'll see how this all plays out.
You know what? There are some offensive coordinators that can change the game. It's rare. And you don't know it until they get there. And do it, but I could look at the quarterbacks and go, that guy might change everything for you. So hard comparison there, Ben Johnson to Caleb Williams.
It was right. No, absolutely. Listen, if they did that, it'd be really exciting for this area again, because I mean that's what the kid brings. So it would be very interesting to watch. So what about Joe Whitt? Any impressions there?
So yes, I mean, obviously, like to go back to the play calling thing, like I'm very comfortable with what he's doing because this guy's worked with him directly in Atlanta, in Dallas. He knows, they're on the same page. So that's the good news. Second, our first round pick last year was Emmanuel Forbes. We need to find out what he's all about. And this is the best possible scenario for all of us and for them to find out what he's all about. These guys have turned corners into turnover machines. They had Trayvon Diggs as high level talent, of like his level, Forbes' supposed level, at least draft level, break team records for interceptions in a season. And then the next year turned a 5th round pick into the guy who had the most pick sixes in the history of the NFL in a single season. So, from this perspective, like the guy who should be ecstatic about what happened today is Emmanuel Forbes. And we're going to find out what he is all about in the very, very, very near future. And, listen, Quinn's defenses speak for themselves with the amount of turnovers that happen. Like I actually, when I get a chance to talk to him personally, I want to ask him about this. Like it is uncanny how many they cause, and it's happened through the years. So it's not a coincidence anymore. Like sometimes they're luck and sometimes they're this, sometimes they're that, but it just has it's happened too many times. So I want to talk to him about it. And so we drafted Forbes to be a ball hawking corner who makes picks and turns games upside down. So I'm excited for him to come back in year 2 in a situation like this where he should have the opportunity to thrive.
I think that's a good point. I'll be curious to see what the impact is on him, because with Whitt, a lot of it was he's a defensive pass game coordinator. So the coverage schemes are going to come from him. And that's something that could benefit Forbes for sure. I wouldn't write off a guy after 1 year. I think I have big questions about him. I really am a big fan of Quan Martin. I have a lot of questions about Emmanuel Forbes, not how he handled the situation, but can he get to the level they need? Is he going to be able to do the work? I think they missed Chris Harris a lot last year. And it's funny, Bram, because one of the things that they missed with him was the ability to tell. And this is something that came up in the presser about guys playing, like making it so guys understand so they can play fast. So there were things that were going on that in the past that Chris Harris could tell Del Rio, these guys can't do that. You can't ask them to do that. They can't play fast that way. You can't ask them to do that. He would push back on things. They missed that this past year because one of the things that kept going is the worse it got, the more complicated they seemed to make it. And you see the mess ups. So I think I think Whitt brings a lot of good coverage schemes and a reputation for that. So I think that's going to help them as well.
Yeah. Listen, there's a lot with what happened over the last couple of years, but for some reason that scheme that they were playing was just too complicated. I mean, that's part of it. Right. It's part of it. And there was one of the home runs I thought Quinn hit today, and he didn't mean it this way, but it wasn't to take a shot at what was happening in the past, but he basically said, we're going to simplify it for everybody. We want you to be able to play fast. We do not want you thinking what you're supposed to do. If you are, it's too late. You're beat. Welcome to the NFL. Like, these guys are too good. You give them an ounce of separation and you're done, especially when you're playing someone like CeeDee Lamb or AJ Brown. You're done, right? So I liked hearing all of that. And obviously the defense that he's had in Dallas particularly, and then in Atlanta, a lot of people putting comments about his last game. Yeah, it wasn't good. If you judge everybody, then why are you upset about Ben Johnson not being here then? Because their last game, they blew a 17-point lead and they scored 7 points in the second half, and it came in the last minute when the game was over. So you could do this to anybody if you really want to.
I keep telling you, like Sean McVay's last game here, they scored 10 points with Kirk at quarterback. Now it's against the Giants. Everybody blames Kirk. Sean was the offensive coordinator. It was 2 of the last 3 games, they scored a combined 25 points. And I would hire McVay 10 times out of 10 after that.
Of course.
Because it's not, being a head coach is not like, yes, it was a bad game. Every single coach, like people wanted Vrabel. He lost like 4 of his last 5 games, something like that. So you don't apply it selectively. yes, like if you're a coach, you don't want that to happen. It was a bad game and it was a bad look. And if you don't come here and be better against the run, it could be, that becomes an issue, but it's not going to be because like, oh my God, the Green Bay game exposed him. He was there for 3 years. That defense was bad before he got there and was really good afterwards. And yes, Micah Parsons, terrific talent, but somebody's got to get him in that spot. And so, it wasn't, and it's just, how do you use the guy? So like, if you don't think he's a good hire, I don't care, but don't use one game as like, oh my God, this is why. No, that's not how it works. But again, Ben Johnson, his last 2 games in the second half, they weren't good. But I would have hired, and if that guy, and here's the other thing, there's a lot of narratives with him, and be careful and understand when people are saying things and where they're probably coming from if they're trying to protect a guy. So just having said that, he's a guy that if he had interviewed well and he'd been named the head coach, everybody had been going crazy. And I would have said, yeah, I like the hire because I think he's a really good offensive mind. But I wouldn't sit there and say, oh my gosh, the last 2 games, his offenses did nothing in the second half of playoff games. It's not how it goes. A head coach is different. Dan Quinn will be the head coach here, not a defensive architect or play caller. And he was a very good one at that.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. I mean, they got a lot of work to do from here. I need to see what their roster looks like. It's going to be remade. I know they didn't say rebuild, and I agree with that. There's kind of no such thing in the NFL anymore, but this is like, there's going to be a lot of different faces here, like a lot through the draft, free agency. There's going to be a lot of turnover. There's a lot of contracts that expired. I remember talking about this last year, and there were so many guys not under contract. And I'm like, let's see who they sign. And then the offseason was wonky, and then they didn't really do any. And I remember sitting there going, this is a tinderbox. Like, you have too many guys not under contract. Well, now here we are, where all these guys aren't under contract. So let's see.
That's a big deal. And it's going to, at the end of the year, Sam Cosmi even said it's going to look like a new team next year. Like those guys, and Dan Quinn said that Matt Ryan, the first year walked in there, it's like, it feels like you're walking into a new team. He's like, that was what he wanted because, you do want it to feel different, and that's without bashing people who are before, but you want it to feel different because you're here because they need a change, period. So it will be, there's a lot of work to be done. You have to find defensive ends. You're going to remake the offensive line. I think that's going to be the big thing, Bram, over the next few months is, what do you do because of Kingsbury's offense? What kind of personnel do you need to go get to fit that? And, and who do you bring back? And someone brought up Fuller, Gibson, and Curl. Like, I'm a big fan of Kendall Fuller. I don't know if the knees, how long they're going to hold up. The guy can still play. And Cam Curl, I would try to bring back at the right price. Gibson, I would imagine he's probably going to go. I think you probably draft a couple of guys, but I don't know that for sure. That would be a guess, knowing that they probably want to get somebody who can operate out of that air raid type style offense in that kind of a back.
They have to draft or go into free agency, get an edge rusher. They have to draft or go into free agency and get 2 to 3 offensive linemen. They have to draft or go into free agency and get a tight end. And then I'm still assuming that number 2 overall pick is a quarterback. Like I think it's going to be. And I don't know how you don't, honestly, with the 3 choices that are sitting there. It's going to be hard not to do that. It really is. I like Sam too. It's going to be hard not to. You're rarely in this spot. And this happens to be a year with very, very, very good prospects at the position. I don't know how you don't take one. But, so we'll see what happens from there. But we got a long way to go. And they do have a lot of cap space to work with. They could maneuver the picks that they have a little bit to try to either move up and down and gain more capital. We'll see what kind of interest there is in the free agent market and what they're going to do. But there are, 4 or 5 prominent things that need to happen. So, often that doesn't lead to quick turnaround. But listen, you never know. I mean, we end up using the 2nd overall pick on somebody who's ahead of the curve, like CJ Stroud. Maybe we're more competitive than people are giving them credit for early.
I say this, I'm an Ohio State alum. CJ Stroud is ahead of these guys as a passer, but doesn't mean they can't come in and make an impact. So, and I've talked to people about that, like how they would rank it. But it doesn't mean that a May or Daniels or whomever they get. The other thing, and the last thing I'll talk about too with the quarterbacks, and then we can wrap this up. the one thing with whoever you pick at 2, the good thing for them is that Howell has played in this offense. So even if he's not a starter here, he can still help them, because one of the things that Howell is really good in that room. And I think he's a mature player and kid. I don't think he's going to come in and feel like and pout if he's not a starter here or something like that. I think he'd handle it very well. I think he'd be good at helping somebody learn an offense that he has played in college. And then it'd be curious to do something with free agent, maybe a guy that Kingsbury knows well or something like that. I don't know. But I do think that's a benefit to Howell, having played in this offense that at least in college. And it's evolved, but at least he has experience in it and knows how to operate it. I think that's a help too. So we'll see where it goes, Bram. But, it's all, listen, you have to win the presser, but you've got to win during the season.
Yeah.
And, again, you're right. Like we've both seen a lot of these coaches who come here, Gibbs with the red carpet, Spurrier with all the, the Spurrierisms and the excitement with that. And, Marty with the passion, and Joe with just Joe, and then Zorn with maroon and black. You talk about somebody who lost it. By the way, and just real quick thing on that too, because you remember the other thing, it wasn't just the maroon and black with Zorn. It was, he sat up there and was applauding the whole, remember the 10-man tribute to Sean Taylor.
Yeah.
Well, Joe Gibbs was not told about that. So it did not sit well with him, because they didn't tell him they were going to do that. So he wasn't too happy about it. And Zorn at his presser is like gushing about Joe and doing this 10-man tribute to Sean. I was standing by Gibbs. I was standing on the side. The place was packed, and I could just see Gibbs' face kind of turning red. But it was like, oh, dude, man, you felt like you plucked somebody's neighbor from a backyard barbecue and said, here, be a head coach.
That was of all the press conferences we had, the introduction ones, that was the one where I walked out going, we're not going to win. One of all the other ones, I was either listen, it's either Shanahan, Marty, Joe, yes, Spurrier, like who didn't know? I didn't know, but like it was hoopla around him. Like who thought the hiring was bad at the time when they did it.
Right.
Or even with Jay, like it didn't inspire a ton of coverage, but I was not like, I'm not open-minded to it. Or Rivera, the Zorn one, because of all, it was just, I walked out of there going, we're not going to win. Like, I just know it. So how long is this going to last? I don't know, but that's the worst feeling on earth, that when you walk out of that first day and you go, oh man, like it's just, this is not going to happen.
I do remember that, because I remember you and I, because at that time we were still, our press room was in the building still. It's about a 50-foot walk from the auditorium to the press room. And I remember specifically saying that this is going to be a disaster. But the funny thing is they started 6-2. And then just the way Zorn thought, they're 6-2 or 6-3 at this time. They had a couple guys hurt, and somebody asked him when they're coming back, and he started talking about, well, we've got to rest them up for the playoffs. I'm thinking, are you kidding me? And at that moment, it's like, well, they're effed, because there's no chance. If you're already thinking like that, you got no chance. Gibbs would never have said that. Gibbs, remember when Joe Whitt asked him an innocent question about playing the Niners, and like Mike Nolan was on the other side, like, do you know Mike Nolan? Something like that. Something innocent. And Gibbs went off for 5 minutes about how everybody's saying we're going to roll over the Niners and they're terrible, blah, that's not going to happen, blah, 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 blah. And he was livid about him. Like, that's why this guy is a Hall of Fame football coach. That intensity, that passion. And then, of course, they go out and they rolled the 49ers, but it was how pissed he was at it. Anyways, I don't know why I'm getting off on that, but it was just a contrast to Zorn, and it was pretty stark.
Today was way better than that.
Yes. I
feel like we got a very competent head coach in here who genuinely wants this job, genuinely wants to prove himself again, genuinely believes he's a better coach now than he was the first time around. Did not walk in here and say, I have all the answers, but said, I've asked a lot of people to help me find them, and got somebody who walked in here and said, I'm ready to do my job, and I'm ready to watch everybody else who's up on this dais with me to do their job too. Like, it was a good day. Does it mean it's, that we're heading towards winning times again? I really, really, really hope so. It's been too long. But there can't be any guarantee of that. That said, I did like today. And off of the week that was a little bit awkward, and it goes without saying that it didn't land with some of the fan base, I think, the way they wanted to. I thought today was a much more, I hope, inspiring indication of what's to come here. And that's why I said, like, I don't really know what the fan reaction was. I was busy doing a show and then I was doing this, and I haven't really checked in on everybody's pulse after hearing him for an hour. But I walked out of there impressed. And I also call the games and am an optimist and want them to be good. And so I'm going to root for the guy, but like, he did nothing to make me feel like apprehensive about the hire. It does. I get it. They wanted a communicator and a leader. You saw that, you saw it, and I felt it, and I'm hoping it carries over, and I'm hoping this team is better. That's all.
Yep. And the last word for me and you hit on it too, the best coaches surround themselves with good people and find people who can't do things that maybe they can do. Joe Gibbs was a master at that. And, we'll see how he builds out this staff, because coordinators, like, I'm intrigued by Whitt. I really like that. Kingsbury, I want to see what that offense does here. And, I think he's got a good reputation as a coach. I know some people in Arizona who play for him who love him. So we'll see. But I'm pretty low on my research on him at this point. But I'm intrigued by it and to see where it goes in the draft with it. But again, with Quinn, I think the key is know what you know and what you and if you don't know something, find somebody who does. And I think he seems to have that mentality here. It gives you a chance. And you're right, though. It's been a long time for these fans. And the last thing too, I'm glad that they did not seem bothered or swayed by all the public opinion, whether media or fans, last week. They stuck to what their process was. Because I talked to people throughout, I think I sensed why are people going crazy like this versus oh my gosh, what's going on, as the other owner probably would have done. So anyways, Bram, that's it for me. Thanks to everybody for joining me. Thanks for Bram again for giving up a lot of time tonight for you guys and for the show. I will be back on Wednesday morning with another episode. So
can I say one thing before we go?
Go ahead.
I'm going to be on Radio Row in Vegas Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So you can check out my show on ESPN 630, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from Radio Row. Also, thank you all to the new members. I'm really pumped about all of that as well. And then, sorry, I hijacked your show. Back to you.
No, that's a good way. That's a great way to close it. Any guests on Radio Row that you know already?
Holy moly. It is wild. Let's see. Oh God. Sean Merriman's supposed to join me. Marcus Williams of the Ravens is supposed to join me. Brad Edwards, old Redskin legend, is supposed to join me. Mike Lombardi, Jonathan Ogden is supposed to join me. So it's fluid. There's a lot of things that you've been out there for this. There's a lot of people that come on, but that's just for now what's happening. I think Rod Woodson's going to join me too. So it's going to be a crazy, crazy week. And I've already told the Commanders, if anybody's out there, please, please, please stop by. So hopefully I'll get a couple of the members of the organization too. I know London's going to be there, so I'm going to wrangle him to come on the show too.
And there you go. And again, like I reiterate what Bram said, thanks to all the people who signed up for memberships. Very excited about that. And so there you go. I'll talk to you next time, folks.